Okay, live.
Hey everyone, welcome to our live painting session today. Trying a new format camera-wise, and hopefully it'll work. We're gonna have a little bit of a new sound thing, and we're learning as we go. So bear with us, hopefully it works well. Today I am going to do something where I'm gonna do a tree, but I'm gonna start with what people often refer to as a Soaring Palette, and then at the end bring in additional colors. So I've always referred to this as a limited palette. I'll show you right now. We're gonna go to my image right here. And above, we have what I call a limited palette. Now, limited palette has to do with white, yellow ochre, Venetian red or a Terra Rosa, either one. This is Venetian red, and black. So it's three colors and white. All right, now let me explain this. This is often referred to as a Soaring palette. However, as I understand it, Soaring used a vermilion. It is basically a muted full color palette. And the reason I'm saying that, if you look down below, this is the yellow. That's pure yellow. That is pure red, cad red. That is pure ultramarine blue with just a touch of white. So here we have our three primaries. So if we relate this to this, the yellow to this, and the red to this, we end up with what I refer to as a muted full color palette, or as I have often referred to it, a limited palette. Like I said, nowadays people very often call this a Soaring palette. When I was in school, I learned it during my second semester at Art Center from a guy named Paul Souza. And so there's my limited color palette. Now I'm going to pull this piece off, and we'll start literally on this 18 by 24 piece that I have right here. And pretty much I haven't sketched anything. So I'm going to kind of sketch and as we go. And we're going to stay with this limited color palette at the beginning. At the very end, maybe the last 40 minutes, I'm going to bring in some additional colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up with the basis of the tree. We'll start with one kind of down here, and we want kind of a ground plane right about in here. I'm just using a little liner, and I've got a little bit of and then we want to get, I've got a little bit of the Terra Rosa, or excuse me, the Venetian red and the ivory black. And we're going to come up with kind of the angles and the basis of what this tree is going to be. It's going to go up here. One of the nice things about trees, as I mentioned I was going to try and do a tree this week, is trees aren't necessarily, they don't follow the absolute rules of what we would think of as traditional geometric perspective, meaning that they can go almost any way. A tree branch does not have to go at a certain angle. So you can change things. Compositionally, it's wonderful. It's a great tool because you can actually change things for the sake of composition. But we're just going to kind of put some of this stuff in here. Might want to bring this over a little bit of the background. I'm not going to do the house. And that's about all I'm going to start with. So I have a basis to work off of. Now, as you probably heard me say before, if I were doing a long painting, I would probably spend a little bit longer on this sketch. Not a lot though, a little bit. This is just a basic oil wash on a gessoed piece of hardboard, and it is kind of a neutral color. I used a little bit of a blue, a little bit of a warm color, and some white, put it on, and then took a cloth. And I did this last night, so you can see it's dry right now. It's going to be similar to the sky value color. So I'm not going to necessarily put that sky in right now like I usually do. We're going to start with black, a little bit of red. So in essence, kind of a purple, and a little bit of white mixed into it, because I don't want to go to my absolute, as I've mentioned many times. An absolute meaning as dark as I could possibly be. So what we're going to do is we're going to start down on the base, and we're going to work kind of thin and loose. Get this kind of basic tree shape in. When you use, if you use the Venetian red or the terra rosa, either one, and the black together, it almost gives you a burnt umber. And then if you want to cool it off, you use more black. The black, in essence, is your blue. It's also a darkening agent. So the black fills two roles. And we'll take it up, bring it over, kind of find where I want these tree branches. Started a little late today because we were playing around with this new format we're trying. We're just going to see how it works with the camera on a palette and another camera literally on the painting. And nothing on me because I figured you don't need to see me. That gives us kind of a feel for what's going on. Things are going to change. There's another little branch here. And I know I've mentioned this in the past, but as you paint and you start to particularize a certain area, what begins to happen is you start noticing things. You start noticing other things that you did not notice in the beginning. So there's a very fluid kind of approach to this. There's a little branch that kind of looks like it sticks out about in here, works its way up. And then I'm going to take that brush, set it down for a second, and I'm going to take, I have another one of those brushes. What I'm going to do is I want to get a little bit of this background stuff going on, just so I don't have to worry about it later. That's the main reason. So we're going to take the black and the white, which is going to give us a blue. Now, if I want a lighter blue, you add more white. And a little yellow will take it towards the greens, the muted greens, which is going to be somewhere in here, maybe a little more yellow in it. When I say yellow, I'm really referring to yellow ochre at this point. And maybe a little bit, oh, it's got some warmth in it. So I threw a little bit of a warmer color. And up in here, we're going to bring that down. And at some point, well, that was interesting. At some point, we'll probably bring other colors into this. But for right now, I'm going to deal with this so-called Soaring Palette. Now I want to go a little darker. So we're going to go a little bit more black, obviously less white, some more yellow. You've really got to compensate. That black is strong. So there we've got kind of a muted green back in this area. I'm purposely not trying to sit down and mix a perfect color. The reason being is because I'm painting foliage, it's never a color. And I think I'm going to put a little over in here too, a little tree. I'm going to invent something here. I'm going to invent something. Kind of, there's a tree right there. Let's kind of get kind of a shape of something going on here. And up above, there's quite a bit of yellow, quite a bit of white. So I'm kind of mixing and a little warm that I can see. Boy, that's touch and go. It's got a little warm. It's also got a little green. So I'm going to start kind of in here. There's some warms, and we just want to get some color movement into this background. It's not going to play a huge role in the painting. It's going to be subordinate. It's going to be basically, as I said, it's going to be a background. So there's no sense in sitting there and dwelling. And if I need to amplify the color, meaning strengthen it, I can do that at the very end. So we're going to maybe bring a hedge or something in here right now. And maybe a little bit more of what we would call a green. So in that case, the white, the yellow, probably going to need to lay out a little bit more, and a touch of black, just a little bit. And that's going to take it to kind of what we refer to as a muted green. And that's going to be up in here. Nope, not more yellow in it. Up in here, and then a little bit warmer as it goes up behind this tree. So we're just going to kind of start to put some of those tones in somewhat of a free form. Okay. Now, I'm going to leave that alone for a second, and we're going to start in on the tree a little bit. The first thing I want to do is start in getting some of the feeling of that foliage. I can use, I'm going to actually, for that, I'm going to take this big rosemary, what they call an extra long filbert. It's often referred to as an eggbert. And I'm going to try and stay pretty true to just the black and the yellow. The yellows takes it towards the green, or the yellow ochre. You can see it's kind of greenish. And this big, poor, sloppy brush, boy, look, like an earthquake hit, is allowing me to, and if I want to go a little darker, just throw a little more black. If I want to go a little greener, I'm probably not going to throw any whites into this at this point. I see no sense in it. Pretty much just the black and the yellow oxide or yellow ochre. I keep saying yellow oxide. And a lot of times when I used to paint acrylic, there was a color called yellow oxide by Liquitex, which is what I used. That's why every now and then I'll catch myself referring to yellow ochre as yellow oxide. I'm going to be kind of free and sloppy to a degree here, but I want it to sit out in front. So if I have to, I'll add a little bit. I don't want to go all the way to the darkest blacks that I can see. And I can see some colors that are really deep and rich. And what might happen, I don't know. What might happen is I actually might be using some of the initial tone coming through and letting it be an additional color, since it is. It's one of the reasons I like working on toned surfaces. It gives me, if I work on pure white, which I do occasionally, I only have one way to go, meaning I can only go darker than white. But if I'm working on a toned surface, it gives me the opportunity to go lighter if I need to, and darker. So we're just going to pull some. And sometimes I'm using just the tip, and sometimes I'm pressing the whole brush down. Before I get too much in here, I'm going to start needing some color in on this tree. Because right now, all we have is a shape, which is really how you want to start. You want to keep things as simple and build in complexity. Just keep that in mind. Keep things simple. If you've got a hunk of clay and you're gonna create a beautiful ball, just a beautiful round ball, you don't just automatically make it a round ball. It has to go through stages to get up to that point where it is a round ball. The same thing is true in painting, literally, because you never start with all the detail. The detail evolves and builds into it. Actually, it builds into your subject, or the form comes out of shape. Shape first, form second. I guess that's trying to find the exact right terminology to give you guys, but that's pretty much it. Shape first, form second. Now, if you're a heavy-duty designer, shape is going to become more important because it will be more of your finishing stage, where if you're a little bit more of a realist, shape is the setup stage for building form into your piece. I hope that makes sense to you guys. It does to me. Okay, let's start getting, still don't have enough of that covered. Well, you guys will see how you can take this and turn it into a lot of color by just adding your color right at the very end. It's you can see in, and again, I'm going to refer back to that concept of the Soaring Palette. You can see that many times he'd come in at the end and add a color, add a little red if he needed it, or a little blue. So what I've done here is I've added some ochre and a little bit of the Venetian red. And we're starting to add a little bit of some of that color back into the tree that we're beginning to see. And it's easy to get lost here. You have to kind of, like, I'm going to come right down here and go back into this part. I'm going to push the paint into that color. So what I'm doing is I'm using the dark that's already down there to mute down this pigment. I can take this is just pure Venetian red. I can go back in here, and it's very strong, but if I push that 2 or 3 strokes back into it, it'll actually sit back into that color that I laid down to begin with. So if you have a base tone down, that color become something you mix color back into. Now I want to get this back in here. So we're going to go up in here, a little more ochre into it, I think. We're going to go up in here. We're going to go down. Don't be afraid of mixing the wrong color. Fear is the one thing you can't have when you do this. And I go back to the line I always use, it's only wrong if you leave it. You're going to do wrong things. And even unless you sit down and you iron out every little detail of this in drawing form. And then what that does is it keeps you so very rigid as you approach your painting that you lose freedom. Now, if you're an ultra hyper type realist, you might do that. Although I do know people that work in that way that literally still start quite free and loose. So I'm trying to find some of the warms that I'm beginning to see. Now there's some stuff hidden, and then there's branches over. This is one of the things about trees, is that everything isn't this way. There is this way, there is that way, meaning back into the distance, and then there's things overlapping. So you almost have to plan for overlapping. Now, if you're a watercolorist, it's a little bit different, because in a watercolorist, you have to plan to leave those lights. Totally different way of thinking. It's less forgiving. That's the easiest way to state it. Watercolor is much less forgiving. Once you've gone dark, boy, it's rough to get those. You can't. It's possible. You just can't get it as pure and clean as you might want it. Now I'm going to go down towards the base and keep these colors kind of muted. Get a little bit more of that reddish color. So if I want to really push that beautiful warm right along the core as it goes into shadow, I can begin to do that. Be free, be sloppy, if you will. I mean, that might be a better way of stating it. Don't feel like you've got to be, every stroke has to be the exact finish that you want. Finishing strokes happen, think about this. I mean, it's logical. Finishing strokes happen at the end. So what we're doing is we're bringing a lot of energy and we're bringing a lot of appropriate indication to this, with the concept of, at the very end, putting enough refinement into it to bring it full circle. So it actually begins to really make all the sense in the world. But it might not in the beginning. It might feel a little bit disjointed. With its colors back, you can actually play with a palette knife at this point and really have a lot of fun. Like if I look back in here, there's a branch coming over that, and there's branch. This is the behind branch. All right. Then if I want to bring a branch in front of it, and whether I keep it exactly as it is in reality or whether I change it a little bit, that's up to me. You get to play kind of a creator, so to speak, not to bring it into religious terms, but you literally do get to play kind of that role because you literally are creating the look. So right now I'm getting what I refer to as I'm particularizing. I'm finding this branch and I'm beginning to find the certain characteristics in that branch. And then I'm going to leave it. So you see, I brought this stroke over that stroke, which brought that branch in front. Hopefully I'll leave it there. Hopefully I won't realize later on that I want it somewhere else. And if I do, I'll move it. There's a lot of what we refer to as dappled light in this. Dappled meaning that the light is kind of filtered. It's coming through a maze, and that maze is allowing it to hit in some spots and get lost in other spots. So it's kind of a fun thing to do. You just have to plan for it. So these are kind of placeholders. And I can see as this branch comes down at around this point, it gets quite warm. So now, in case you're wondering, I'm talking right here. Talking right here. And I can take almost a pure red color. Look at that underneath. Unless I leave it there, which I'm not going to. But if I wanted to, I could leave it there. Remember, all these colors that I'm using at present are muted, meaning they're not full strength, is saturation. I can make it much brighter just by bringing more pure color into it. I'm going to bring a little bit of, there's little branches back in there. I don't know if I can do it with this brush, but I'm going to try because I kind of like these big old brushes. You can see how sloppy they are, and they really bend when you put it down, which gives you kind of a different characteristic than if you're using a flat. So I'm playing with some tools that I haven't used as extensively in the past, which I like doing because I learn things. Every painting is a form of learning for all of you guys. Hopefully they come out good on top of it, but generally I look at them as a form of trying to get better. We want to build. Foliage isn't any one color. Never is. I can particularize leaves. In other words, I can go back to a leaf, and if I wanted to at the end, I can start going in and just bring a few. That could take you forever. So because I'm doing this in a time frame, a limited time frame, I'm not obvious. It's obvious that I don't have the time to go back and refine those to the degree that I might if I wanted to do something much more in a realistic vein. And at times that's what I want to do. And at other times, no, I want to keep it as fresh and as suggestive as I possibly can. Let's see, there are some little warm lights branches coming back through here. So let's start to at least put those in. I'm squinting my eyes. You guys can't see what I'm doing. I'm looking, as I squint my eyes, I'm looking right here. And as I move that over, I can see that I need to go a little bit more here. I need a little bit more. And I'm just letting the brush do the work. I'm not working hard at it. Hopefully, if I apply the paint properly, the brush will create the illusion that I'm after. And that was a big if. The branch coming over here too, I see. Coming right there, and it's black with a little terra rossa, a little too much, or excuse me, Venetian red. And it comes down here. And another branch right there. I'm sure I'm going to leave some of these out, but I really don't care. I want to get the essence because it's just such this wonderful feeling. And if I have to put a branch in and bring foliage back over it, that's fine too. So you can see it, the tree is starting to grow, which is really what I wanted. And I have not pushed my lights. I know I've mentioned that in the past. I generally save my heavy, strong lights and strong darks toward the end. And in this case, I'm saving my strong color for the end too. Not just lights and darks. I'm also saving the stronger, brighter color for the end. I don't even care if this stuff back in here becomes extremely abstracted. Sometimes it actually makes for a better painting rather than have everything nailed exactly the way you want it, so everything is refined. That could be nice too. Again, we go back to that word that I use over and over and over again called intent. What is it that you were intending this to be? I'm going to go back to my big brush here for a second. Pick up a little black, pick up a little white, making it more cool. Try and keeping all of the warm colors out of it. So it's just black and white, so it's more of a pure blue, and kind of hitting some strokes down in here. Now I can see, whoa, I just spotted. Again, this is that noticing. As you start zeroing in on areas, you begin to notice certain things. And I've noticed some cools right in here. That's probably a little too light. So I threw a little bit more black into it. And its texture, its bark texture, there. This is the fun part of tree painting. Finding, if you take the time, finding the warms and the cools. And they're there in almost every type of tree. Some trees very pronounced, other trees not as obvious. This is not extremely obvious, but it's more pronounced than I've seen in other. So I'm painting, I guess another way to think of what I'm painting right now is a form of shadow detail. And there's some sky back in there. I haven't even dealt with sky, you noticed. So if I take white and move it way over into a clean part of the palette, oh, I have too much warm color in there. So we got to get rid of that warm color when you want something to look cold, because we're only dealing with 3 colors. And I don't have a true blue at present. I may later. I haven't decided as far as this. So this is just black and white now, and it's a lot of white. And I'm going to test it right here. The value is right. Okay, and we'll bring it over here. The same thing, I'm going to change this tree shape. So we're going to bring that tree shape more in there. There's your sky. So if you notice, the color I'm using for the sky, which is basically just black and white, the color I'm using for the sky is very similar to the value of that base tone I had down there, which makes it really kind of nice. So we're starting to get some of these negative spaces. There's a little bit up here, I see. Let's see, right about here. Right there. Mixing it into that warm, I gotta be careful. Very narrow. About in. Keep it free. I talk to myself, come on, free it up. I'll do stuff like that while I'm working on my own. Loosen up a little bit, that kind of stuff. What are you doing? I'm talking to myself, not you guys, but literally, that's kind of, by using this big brush, I'm not being super exact, I'm being more free. So the strokes I'm putting down are not as rigid, so to speak. That. Now, on this side, let's double check this, because there is a branch. And let me go back to my Egbert here, and there's a branch coming right out here, I just noticed. It's probably lower, right about here. And then there is sky above that, which I've already begun to indicate. And then there is sky below that. And I will come back in and refine a branch if I need to. Just because I'm putting all of this stuff in here doesn't mean it's going to stay exactly like that. And it's building. I'm building a tree, so to speak. And each stage, it becomes more obvious. In the beginning, it's pretty abstract. I could also, what I'm saying right now, I could relate that to painting a figure, where you're freer, you're more simple, you're more indicative. And as you progress, you become more refined, more definitive. Have fun with it. Now, if you notice, I have not pushed bright lights in the tree. I can see, I just noticed on this branch that there's a little bit of warm reflective light, and I've got kind of a variety of warm colors mixed up. So I can kind of put that in right there. There's a little bit of warmth right here as an underpainting. But let's decide right now how far I can take my brights. I'm going to keep an eye on the time. Started a little late. I'm about 30 minutes into it. So this is white and yellow ochre, nothing more. And but it's not pure white. It's not as white as I can be. I'm mixing a little bit more yellow ochre. I felt like I was moving to the white a little too fast. So I want to go a little bit in there. And I can see, I can actually add a little bit more red into that. I'm gonna have to lay out some more yellow ochre in a second. I can see right now, rip through it very quickly. So we're going kind of working back towards what I would call more of the mid-tones before I put those bright lights in. Starting to take on a little bit of form. Not quite as fast as I would hope it, but I've every now and then a mysterious hand will come out and add the colors. If I say it out loud, it'll actually, the color will just appear on my palette.
Ask, can you show us?
You guys need to, I've invented that now. I think I'll patent it. Okay, we're starting to get some of that color variation. Oh boy, I just noticed cools. Look at that, right in there. And that warm versus cool, or in this case, a little bit of a reddish color versus the blue, really starts to add some character in here. I see it there and I just see it here. Maybe not quite that blue, but remember, this isn't blue. This is basically gray. And these big heavy darks aren't going to remain here. I think I do need to get a little bit of that ground in. I'm just staying with ochre and white for that right now. And we're going to start to put it right here. And a little bit of warmth into that too, particularly as it comes down near the tree. I see some, so I'm just, one of the cool things, you guys, about working with this real limited palette is you don't have to sit down and guess what color you've either, if you went warm, you went with the Venetian red. If it's cool, you went more with the black and white. If it's yellow, you went more with the yellow oxide. So you can see that looks pretty bright there. That doesn't look that different than that. And that's just with those super limited colors. So we're going to take white. I'm going to see, I'm just going to white and yellow ochre.
When you have a minute, Rosie would like to know about how you, about your palette. How'd you get the mid-gray underneath the glass?
Maybe how you... No one's asked that. Thanks, Rosie. I just assume people know a lot of this stuff, and it's my own ignorance. Literally, these glass palettes I make, I have a whole bunch of them. I have 18 by 24s. I have, this is 24. Occasionally I use a 24-30. Basically a piece of glass and a piece of thicker birch or plywood, whatever you want to call it. And when I get them cut the same size, bring it home with acrylics, mix up what I consider a neutral gray. You can buy actually a neutral gray too, but I just end up mixing it up with black and white. Paint the board, let it dry, put the glass over it, and take duct tape and put it around it.
All sides.
And that's it. And you can do any size you want. And the great thing about glass palettes is, I don't know if I have, but if you take it, you get a scraper at the end. This one's really crudded up, but you look at how clean you can get that right away. Just hold on, you might want to do that again. So if you take, go ahead, try it again. If you take it, you just kind of take like that, boom, you got it. It's clean as can be. And even if it's dry, you just scrape it off. So it's wonderful. I kind of want it to skip because I'm making this up over here anyway. So I want it to feel, I think I'm going to put fence posts in. I see some, and I think it'll help right at the end kind of do something there. So we're going to get that going. Again, it's pretty easy for me to mix the color I want because I don't have a lot of colors to choose from. I've often felt this is one of the best ways to learn. When I first did this in school, I was blown away. Not with what I did, but with the fact that it worked, that you could work with those 2 or 3 different colors and get almost a full color effect. I was just shocked the heck out of me. And, come to find out all these years later, I thought my instructor was a genius, that Anders Zorn was the genius. Maybe he got it from Zorn. Maybe he figured it out on his own. I don't know. But come to find out, that's what Zorn did. And you know what? If it worked for him, man, it'll work for anybody. It's easier. I'm an interesting point here. It's easier not to screw up in terms of color with a limited color palette than it is with a full color palette. The reason being, and I see this a lot, having taught for eons, I've seen people want to oversaturate their colors. And this forces you not to oversaturate. You cannot oversaturate your colors with this. You can only go so red, you can only go so yellow, and you can only go so blue. So you're painting, what you actually end up learning more is you learn a little bit more about color relationships, that you don't always have to go brighter in your red. You just have to put a duller color next to your red to make your red look bright. So there we have what looks like a sky. And right back in here, I see it. So let's take it and little sound effect for you guys. This can be, you can go as crazy as you want with this, by the way. I mean, you can go insane and, you know, paint every little tree hole. You just have to be careful if you do that, that it doesn't look too mechanical. It, you know, it's very easy to get your painting looking incredibly mechanical when you try and get all these little, every little tree hole, every little feeling that you see. So you want to create the illusion of it and maybe not the exactness, which is to a degree what Impressionism is. Somebody asked me if I could define Impressionism in a class once, and I said, thought about it, and I've used this many times since, and I said, basically, if you look at whatever your subject is, I don't care if you're painting plein air, you're painting from a model, you're painting still life, look at your subject. Then keep your eye focused on that subject, close your eyes. Keep them closed for 5 to 10 seconds, then open your eyes again for 2 to 3 seconds, and then shut them. What you see in that 2 to 3 seconds is Impressionism. Now, we can take it and go further with it and really get into the color movement and Impressionism and all these other aspects. But basically, that's what you're painting. If you can paint that, which I refer to as the essence of what you see, you've got to get that essence down before you ever worry about what someone might call detail. Detail only works if you get what I like to call the substructure down, that what the final refinements are built on top of. Think about that. Seriously, think about it. I mean, your final refinements are your final refinements. So you're refining different parts of your painting at different time, but you're not finalizing anything till right at the very end. And it's right at the very end that you really, you slow down, you put that finesse in, you do, you know, you do the necessary value manipulations. You might wipe something out, put it back in. But until that, you're constructing, you're building all the way through. Then maybe at the end, it's time to refine. I said this, I think I said it a couple weeks ago. If you think it's time to refine, don't refine. Work a little longer. Find other areas you can work back into. I'm trying to keep moving all over the piece, so I'm not trying not to get hung up, because I might come out with one area that ends up being just a jewel and the rest of the piece just really falls apart. So what I want, at least for the sake of these demonstrations, is for the piece to work as a whole. There still may be problems, and I've looked back at some of these demos that I've done. I see all kinds of problems. Generally, the pieces are working pretty well as a whole, and that's in the shorter time frames. That's really what you're going for. You're going for the essence of whatever your subject is. I'm trying to bring up these colors and values slow. Looks like I can brighten it up right in here. Probably should switch to another brush. I feel like I'm beginning to use this one brush too much. And what happens is when I do that, I feel like all the strokes start to come out the same. And it's because I like variations. And that's why sometimes I will pick up a palette knife, and use that just so, because if it's getting monotonous, great artist, good friend of mine. Hopefully I haven't said this before. I've done so many of these weekly things that I may repeat myself. And if I do, slap me side the head and tell me to shut up. But John of Sorrow, I happen to have a couple of John's paintings. John is just, I think he's, in my opinion, the best colorist alive today. But that isn't actually what I was going to refer to, because John, we were having breakfast once, and John said, you know, to me, either a painting is exciting or it's not. I thought that's kind of a nice way of putting it. It's either exciting or it's not. Now, what makes it exciting is what's difficult to define. What makes it exciting to one might not make it exciting to another. I mean, one of the great things about art and painting is there's room for everybody. And you just have to hone your own voice. That comes out of, it doesn't come out of taking a workshop. It doesn't come out of watching a demo. It comes out of practice, 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 practice. And then personal evaluation, not beating yourself up and saying, boy, I suck, but evaluating, honestly, evaluating your work. That's one of the things that is valuable in doing a long painting. You have that incredible amount of time to evaluate and reevaluate and reevaluate. In doing a quicker paintings, you learn more about capturing the essence. And you learn a little bit more about, say, how you like to create, how you can use an economy of information and brushwork to convey what you want to convey. And there's an advantage of working quickly, and then there's an incredible advantage of working, for a long time on a piece. That really becomes extremely personal. I know people that I've had people in my quick studies class that groan when I say 5 minutes left, and then I hear a groan, and I kind of chuckle to myself. But then on the other hand, if I teach a class where we're doing more finished work, sometimes some of these same people think that they get it done too fast, and they're trying to finish it without developing it. They're going right for the finished characteristics, and they're not evaluating. So I think you need to understand kind of the time frame that you're gonna, if you're just gonna paint until you think your painting is great, then it almost doesn't matter. You can go as slow as you want, evaluate whatever you want. It's a free-for-all. Yet at the same time, let's say you're doing a painting, I don't know, for a commission, and someone wants it or needs it by a certain date, and you maybe have committed to getting that work done in time. Then you're under a little bit more pressure. Then you have to work within that time frame. I enjoy both, and probably it's because of the years of illustration that I enjoy deadlines a little bit more than some people do. Yet at the same time, I sure love the opportunity to be able to work on something until I feel it's really working well. It's just, say, I don't like that tree shape again. I'm going to change that again. That's evaluation. That's what I was just talking about. I mean, not that I couldn't live with it, but I want this tree to come in here and come back out here. And if I have to do more foliage, I'll do that. So the tree has a little bit better shape. Same with this, comes up a little bit. Now, I'm going to keep moving. Okay. I'm going to move up in here. I want it in about 15 minutes or so. I want to add other colors. I already have a few other colors laid out on my palette. I want to add them into the mix and show you how to amplify some of these colors, how to strengthen them. But I'm catching all these, I'm just starting to catch all these cools. Like I catch it right here, I see it cool. And I see it come down here and then dissipate. And what the cools are, truthfully, is shadow detail, where we're looking into the shadow and we're catching some of these cools. I don't really see many of these cools in the light. Almost all of them that I see are in the shadow. I know I said I probably should switch brushes and I haven't, but I will. I can just make a few of these very free strokes, kind of putting some branches back in. Comes overlaps. There's another one comes out here. It's basically the black with a little bit of the Venetian red thrown into it. We get a little bit, some wonderful little dappled light cast shadows right in here. And what we'll do now is amplify the lights. Yellow, ochre, white, a little bit of medium because I'm laying it on top. And we're going to start here, and I'll work my way down. Start right there, comes down, dissipates, and then strengthens again right about in here. Up here. Little pieces in here, little tiny pieces, right there, there. I may have to put some of the shadows back in. I'll try and leave them, but if I don't get it just right, I may have to put them back in, which I can see I do right now. I have to bring some of them back in. I want to bring a little bit more warmth to it as it gets down right about in here. And then a lot of little dappled light right in here. Bum, bum. I see a whole bunch. So I just want to use part of that, the tip of that brush.
What brush are you using?
It's a rosemary long bristle filbert, and I'm looking for a number on it. I think it says 6. I would have thought it was bigger. These brushes are just wonderful for doing this kind of stuff. They really are. Okay, I'm going to get this branch. This is a tree branch. Again, the red, when I refer to red, I'm red the brown, and then the branch comes from here, it comes up, and it comes over. I brought it up a little higher, and then we get a little bit of cast shadow dappled down in here. Now, while I've got that cast shadow color, let's go back here. I gotta keep it loose enough so it lays on top. One of the strokes comes down. So we're getting these shadows starting to work. Again, starting to work. Oh, I see some more cools. God, I like that. I love that when I see these on this tree, on this branch that's back here, which I didn't even notice that there was a branch that was tucking behind back in here. And what that does, it allows me to take the black and the red, and we're going to bring that tree. So now I'm carving back with darks. Remember, I didn't start as dark. So you can see how you're building these darks back into it now. And the darks are a combination of black and a little bit of that Venetian red. Where initially when I mixed up those two, I threw some white into it, if you recall. So we're starting to get some separation. And just starting to look a little more carefully at these branches. This branch, this long, is casting that shadow. And that's why we're getting this, but that shadow is transparent and it's got warms and cools within it. So you want to be able to kind of come back inside of it, hit it in there so it's correct. A little bit of a knot in the tree right there. Starting to work up in here. We got to start coming over with a little bit of foliage over parts of this tree. Also, I can see right now I'm going to probably need to bring in my liner in a little bit. In fact, let's do it right now. Let's get some small branches in there. So we get, this isn't the end all, but let's get a few small little wispy. One there. I got that there. There's a few that hang down here. We want to get enough overlapping. Got to keep the paint real wet with this because this little tiny brush is not very stiff, so it doesn't lay paint down like other brushes might. A little darker right there. I'm constantly adding more terp to it. A lot of little overlapping. I can see light overlapping too, which is, by the way, this tree sits back behind this. So I've actually just darkened a tree trunk. But there are also light areas that overlap. Light branches, slightly warmer and lighter. So we're going to get some of those in. That's about right. Maybe go a little stronger, a little bit stronger. Let's try it again. Put a few of these in. We're very busy. A lot of busyness in here. Get some more yellow into it. As I do, I got to keep it real wet. I just said that the wet, if it's not wet, because I'm painting on wet paint. If I don't have it wet enough, it's not going to sit on top. It's not going to do much of anything. So I've got to keep it wet. And you can see in some instances, I'll get a dry brush effect. It's okay. I don't mind. I'm going to grab a smaller, I'm going to grab this little filbert here for a second and try and get a little bit more light going on up towards the top in here, like up in here, really light in here. I probably, before I put those branches in, I probably should have painted all this. So you can start to see we're starting to get a little bit of the dappled characteristics going on. I got to stand back for a second. I see a little bit more dapple right in here, which I can bring in. I think that'll help. Not as bright. And then pretty bright here. Back to my liner, because I see some more, the reason being is I see more little branches happening right here, just where light just tends to hit and miss on them. It hits some, and then right down in here, right about in here is a whole cluster. Too long. I'll bring foliage over it though. Back in here, back in there, a little bit down in here. the variation of brushes gives me different characteristics also, which is what you're trying to do. This feels very vacant. I see a little bit in there. I don't see a lot. I see some overlapping. Oh, I see. What I'm missing, the light at the top, right across from here. There is some beautiful light on this branch, or here. It's hit and miss. Another big, beautiful piece of light right there. Here. A little warmer. Down. Kind of back in here. Nothing in here. We're starting to, I need to start getting some of the foliage overlapping on top of some of this. So, because if I don't, we're going to I'll end up out of time without getting everything I want into it. So even though this may be more abbreviated and understated, I'm going to move into another realm in just a second. Let me see if there's anything. Some beautiful color. I got that. I kind of have it there. Looks. Oh, I see a little bit of a sky back there too. The gray, right? Okay, let's start with some of that foliage. I'm going to go back to this big old clumsy brush. We're going to take some white, yellow, and black. And in a second, I'm going to switch over and get some color into this, you guys. And we'll take it out of just this realm. But we're going to start to put a little bit more light foliage in on top. And then I still haven't put the dark of the foliage in. A little bit up in here, get a little bit right in here. Gotta be careful. I don't want to mix that in with the warm. Okay, I'm going to start adding some color. I'm going to take a little bit of the green now. I have green off to the side. And I brought the green right into that color I'm using because I don't want it to shock, but now I've got a little bit more green in it. So what we're doing at this point is we're taking the concept of that limited color and we're giving it a little bit more snap. But I'm still trying to keep it within the confines of the initial palette that I was using. I don't want it to stand out so much more that it becomes a foreign a foreign color in the painting. Little tiny pieces of light back in here. I'm using this brush. Now I'm going to take the yellow, the white, and the green, as opposed to the black. And getting a lot of color, even coming across a little bit in here, and here we're getting some. So I'm just kind of letting the brush do the work, mainly because of time. Now I'm throwing some blue into this color. That's going to change it even quite a bit more. Not as much as I thought. Good. I really don't want it to change a lot, is why. I'm going to bring a little color underneath. And then I'm going to start in with some darks. I add a little bit more white and yellow to it. So getting a little bit more color variation. Behind.
Steve said it's amazing that you haven't even introduced blue yet. It really shows how important color's relationship with each other almost tricks your eye.
Absolutely. It does trick your eye. Good. That's a really a great way of stating it. It really does trick your eye. It's because it's color. You got to keep, but color is all, it's not about brilliance. It's about relationships. It's really about relationships. How bright is something? How much, if you dull a color enough, you can make what would normally be a color that's not really bright feel bright. A little cast shadows back in here. So just putting, I just got to put enough back in here so it begins to make some sort of sense. Okay. A little bit more. I'm going to grab some more green and a little bit of, oh, that's nice. That's probably a little too strong, too fast. And that's one of the problems with dealing with a rigid time frame like this, is we have to come up a little faster than I would normally like to come up. I would normally come up much slower and build 4 or 5 layers of greens before I get to what I might consider the brighter greens. But when you're just capturing the essence, now you're seeing we're getting, one of the things I was trying to do in this is, and I talked to everybody about this earlier, was to capture the layers this way, this way, and this way. And it's actually starting to work pretty good. So I added a lot of black to that color I was just using, but it's not pure black. What we're going to do is we're going to start in on some of the darker foliage. And what you do with that is you're layering the foliage, if you think about it. In other words, by layering, what I mean is I've painted some lighter colors back, now I'm painting some of the darker colors out front. I'm going to go darker still. I don't feel like it's enough black. And every time I do it, I'm adding a combination of safflower and Gamsol because I need it to stick. And if it's too dry, it's not going to stick. So I want to come over like it's a nice, beautiful. I just want to get, I can't get the character. Drive me crazy. A little piece right in there. You could play forever on this. Honest to God, this can be part of your enjoyment, fun. It's just therapeutic, and you can kind of go back and hit a layer, and then come back and hit another layer on top. I'm using more of the side of the brush, pretty much for the sake of time, because I'm trying to indicate the feeling of that foliage. Where I might, if I had more time, might go back and indicate a few more leaves. And I might, on top, when I'm all done, I might want to come back on this and really pull out a few leaves here and there. So it's not just all big brush strokes like this. Although this is kind of fun stuff. We'll get some of this stuff going on up in here, where some of it, there's some comes across. There's a lot of skipping. We're getting the feeling of those trees. If I want to, I can place, there's some beautiful colors I can get. I'm going to take green. Whoa, where'd that red come from? I didn't mean that, but what the hell? Let's grab some green. Oh, there's a lizard sitting right next to it. Green and ochre. And there is some warm, son of a gun. Oh, I wasn't trying for it, but coming through. Color on color on color on color on color. If it's not, you put it in there. If it's not right, you just come over it. Again, going back to if it doesn't, it's only wrong if you leave it. Some really nice branches that I didn't catch earlier that I'm just beginning to see now.
Amanda said that tree needs a swing.
The tree needs a swing. Well, I'm going to save that for when you come visit. I'm going to allow you to put the swing in wherever you want to put it in. Get some foliage overlapping. It's a little vacant right in here. Start to notice all these little areas that feel a little empty, like right about in here. Go back to my liner, put a lot more of these little branches in. This feels really weird to me right here.
Why?
I don't know. Oh, is it? I can see there's a twig or two that kind of overlaps it, which helps quite a bit. It just felt vacant. It felt like it needed something. It probably needs to be a little darker now that I look at it. So I'm going to take some of that black that I was using, a little of the, and we're going to kind of come in and we're going to start to deepen this color a little bit. It's got a lot of red in it. It's still got a lot of the Venetian red. Okay, and then up here, I'm just catching all kinds of little fun things. Oh, I see another branch. Kind of overlaps right here. I can bring in over here, that liner. Down in here, a lot of busyness, even down here. What you're adding is activity. Whether it's exactly what you see doesn't matter, because there could be 4,000 little branches up in there. I mean, you just don't know. I can, for example, right now I just noticed, and this is part of that evaluation process, there's a bunch of twigs that are coming from here and working their way down here. Now, it wasn't wet enough, so it didn't stick, but they're coming down here, here, and even overlapping into this. So we're getting that layering, and that's one of the things that's really crucial, that you start to study that. You start to study the fact that it's not one-dimensional, that there's things going on behind and there's things going on in front. And you need to give it time to bring both out. So we're going to kind of come in. I'm going to be a little more careful now. And this is what you do as the closer you get to finish. You slow down and you become more careful and more accurate. So therefore, you maintain the energy that you were trying to get in initially on this painting, but so you want enough refinement. So it's a combination of control meeting energy. If you think of it, I like to think of it that way. It's actually how I think about painting in general. I want freedom and energy, yet I want control. Now, where more of an expressionist might want more freedom and energy, more of a realist might want more control. I like the balance. If I can strike a balance with those two concepts, energy and control, then I'll feel like I've got a successful painting. Sometimes I find myself, I get too much control and I feel like I need to go back and add some more energetic types of strokes into the piece. so much of that is personal. So much of that is personal. There is not a rule book. I mean, people would love it if there was. First you do this, then you do this. Well, there are basics that you can learn. I always like to tell people, at least when I teach, I try and teach the simplest way of working, of learning, I should say. Once you've got that down, then you can augment it and you can go off on tangents and try a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And the more confidence that you have, the more that you will take chances. Some people take chances too soon and the whole thing falls apart. And other people never take chances and the whole thing can get boring. So you have to find out. Now, if you're a super realist, you may love things that are much more refined. I flirt back and forth between the two. At times, I really want more control and I want to push myself and be more realistic. And at other times, I just want to cut loose, much looser than I am here.
Somehow I lost it, but Ray posted, wanted to know if there was any subject that you haven't had time to paint, or if you would.
You mean a demonstration wise?
Paint more of.
Just
in general, I guess. Just subject matter.
I don't know. Good one.
Lost the question.
I don't know about that one. That's a hard question. I'm going to take some yellow. Haven't taken yellow yet, and a little green. Subjects that I haven't painted. I am really wanting to do more figure and interior. I can tell you that. That's probably one of the things, more where I can actually pose models. I would like to do more of that. I must admit, I love painting on location. I never thought I would have. I mean, most people that know me for years would have laughed if I had told them that years ago. But I find I love it. And for that reason, when we travel abroad, that to me is one of the most purely enjoyable types of painting I do. And actually, sometimes they come out good. You know, it's like, what I have learned is over the years, they've gotten better. I don't know if they've gotten better. I think what happened is my bad ones aren't as bad as they used to be. And I think that's true with everybody. Now, I've had this desire. I don't know what I'm going to do next week. Haven't decided, but I've thought about maybe doing something more portraity, just because I haven't done it for a while. It's a lot of it comes down to kind of, you get into a rut, and people get into a color scheme rut. People get into a subject rut. A rut isn't bad, by the way. Let me go back and talk a little bit about that. A rut is in some people's style. I mean, some people might call a style a rut. So I have to be very careful when I say a rut, because that's very personal. For me, a rut is if I paint the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Number one, it becomes formulaic. It becomes so much of a formula that I feel like, and don't get me wrong, I do believe all artists have a certain amount of formula to everything they do. I've always felt that. Yet at the same time, every now and then I'll look at someone's art and I'll go, no, why didn't I do that? Every now and then, I mean, I look at masters. I mean, maybe some contemporary masters and people that a lot of people don't know. I have a wonderful book given to me by a friend of mine named Sonny Epicenter. Sonny just cuts loose, man. I got to give that guy just goes for it. He just lays his brush down and charges into it. And I really admire that, and so every now and then I'll feel like, geez, I want to push my work more that direction. Then on the other hand, every now and then I'll turn around and go, I really want to do something really refined, really, really, really nice and refined. And so I kind of bounce back and forth. But the artists that tend to inspire me the most are, I mentioned Zorn, Giacomo Favoretto. I've become a huge fan of his work, just an enormous fan. Guy just blows me away. And I'll look at it and I'll say, you know what? I'm not ambitious enough. I don't attempt things. And I kind of want to attempt a couple of super large multi-figure paintings. And I've got a couple in mind. And this is in response, I guess, to what Ray was asking me about painting and what I think I want to paint. And I do think I want to paint a couple of large multi-figure, and I'm thinking of like a 6 or 8 foot painting of some of my vineyard workers, really big. Big paintings, you know, as an individual who makes their living greatly through gallery sales, you also, and I hate to say this, you also have to think about what you do that sells. And it's terrible to think that way. It's from an artist point of view, it is terrible. But from an individual who has to continue to make some sort of living with it, it's part of reality. So I kind of flirt back and forth with all kinds of subjects in that regard. I do have a plan. I'm working on a series right now. I don't want to even say what it is, but large paintings. I've got one right behind me. It's 36 by 36, which isn't really large, but and I've got a couple of canvases that are much, much larger. And it just, part of it is a subject I was interested in, and part of it is I had a vision. And every now and then I get I get a vision of something that I kind of want to do. I have a series of kind of abstracted flowers, very large. I've got some verticals, long panels. So I have a lot of different things that interest me. But at the same time, I don't want to rush it. Demonstrations, these are different. These I rush. And I'm using kind of some of my intuition and some of my experience to hold the whole thing together. But in essence, they are rushed, and they're fine. I mean, I'm not trying to say they're terrible. They're just not as finished. They have a lot more energy, so to speak, and so they're fulfilling that side of me that wants that energy. And I get a lot out of these. I keep hearing from people saying, "Oh, they thank you," but I get a lot out of these too. I learn a lot. And I challenge myself. I didn't know. And I don't know if this came out any good. It came out okay. So I think learning is just something that artists create. I've talked to many artists that say they just wish they could be a student forever. I hear that a lot. And I'm not sure what they mean, because I still feel like I am a student. Learning constantly from what other artists do. Somebody does something, I go, wow, that's dynamite. I don't want to replicate it because they're doing it. So I've always looked for things that I can kind of do and make it kind of my own, rather than try to be like someone else, unless I'm picking one of the fabulous deceased masters. That's a different story. I got about 5 or 6 more minutes. Started to come together. Things I need to add some darks. I can see problems. I'll try and do a little bit of refinement here and there. I want to go back and recarve the shape of this tree. So I've actually gone into the background, in case you're wondering what I'm doing, because I was trying to recarve. Now, I'm going to take this black and I'm going to add a hint of red to it so it's warm. It's about the only time, by the way, you guys, that I use black on my palette is in a limited palette. And occasionally I'll do it. Occasionally, I remember I did something that actually came out really well a few years ago. It was a figure. It was a violinist, and I did it completely in a limited palette. And I never added any other colors to it. And I was kind of proud of myself that I pulled the whole thing off with that limit. So, and it kind of spoke to me and said, you could pull this off with a limited palette. So I said, what the hell, let's give it a shot. And it worked. So right now it's a matter of, I've pushed my lights, I've pushed my midtones. Now I'm pushing some darks. And that was the advantage of starting off with a color that had white in it. That dark that I first laid down, I had some white in it. It was not just, and what that allowed me to do, it gave me the room to add darks, dark accents. So I can go back into this and I can take a crease and deepen it right there. I can deepen that crease right there in the shadow. I can take and strengthen that dark. And I added a little white to it now because I want to go back in right in here and break this up. It was a little too, I went too solid. So now I can add that texture back in. I can add it there. I can see it, or I can add it back in here. So, and you kind of, we're bringing a little bit more control. I was going to say realism, but I kind of don't mean realism. I really mean more control to some of these areas. So that's that dappled light. This bothers me. It's a kind of a floating stroke right now. So I go back to this black with a little bit of the Venetian red, and we'll try and tie this right down into this kind of junction where the two tree forms come together. I've been doing a lot of these little paintings lately, little tiny for Waterhouse Gallery, one of the galleries that I went. They had mentioned something about it, and I kind of took it. I like to take things as challenges, and so I decided I really don't do a lot of like 5x6. I do them on location, and I do them more like what I usually call quick and gooey. But I really just don't sit down in my studio and ever do these little tiny 5x7s, 4x4, or no, 6x6, 5x7, 6x8. And so I did a series of 8 of them, all Santa Barbara theme based. It was fun. It's fun to change. It's just my nature. I don't know if it's the fact that I was an illustrator and I was forced to do so many things that I've come to where I actually enjoy trying different things. And so in a way, I'm still waiting to find out what I want to do. I think I know, but it changes. So we're getting kind of the characters and the busyness of this tree. That just I think it's very important that I kind of make this statement that I could easily stay on this painting and keep finding new things in the painting, on the painting, and I could probably spend 15 more hours on it. Just moving things around, taking things out, adding more things that I find I'm discovering as I move along. So what I'm saying is that I think it's very important to be I've learned this through teaching, by the way, because I've done demonstrations for so many years. Everybody just assumes that I paint very, very quickly. And it's not true. I don't paint very, very quickly. I paint for the time that until I get the painting the way I want it. So I could easily, like I said, I know I could easily take this painting and spend another 15 to 20 hours on it, just developing, maybe removing things, maybe adding things, maybe moving things, maybe amplifying colors. It's just maybe dealing with a little more texture here and there. All that. It's just, and I think the reason it's important to say that is because a lot of times people think that what you need to do is just paint very quick like this. No, this is a demonstration. This is literally, and I don't mean to belittle that either. I mean, what I mean by that is that a demonstration has its purpose, and sometimes there's a spontaneity to a demonstration that can come off even stronger than a painting that you sat there and labored over. So, and it happens. But on the other hand, usually on any demonstration, I can go back and look at it and go, boy, I wish I would have done this. I think I could have done this a little bit better and that a little bit better. But it's like a plein air piece. A plein air piece to me is you go out, you paint for an hour and a half or 2 or 2.5, whatever your time frame is, and that sun will change and you're done. And you maintain unless you're going to go back and do 2 or 3 days in a row, which is kind of fun, and I'll do that, but usually on large paintings. But the point of it is you want to keep the integrity, and it goes back to that word that I've said over and over, that intent. What exactly is your intent? Is your intent to do, for lack of a better word, an abbreviated painting, a painting that you get done in an hour, in 25 minutes, in 2 hours, in whatever the time frame or is it a painting that you want to sit and work every little problem out and make it a complete labor of love finish type of painting? I think that's something that everybody's got to figure out on their own. I flirt back and forth between the two all the time. It depends. And the last thing I'd like to say as I'm doing touch-ups is, remember one thing. All of you, I assume, get into this thing called painting because it's fun. And it's easy to lose sight of that. It's very easy to lose sight of that simply because you're struggling. It's not coming out the way you want. Things aren't happening exactly the way you had them planned. And so you get frustrated. So I think that part is extremely important for everyone to realize. I'm going to put a little bit of a fence post. I like those. I like the man-made. I didn't want to put the house in, but I like the man-made posts back here. And there's a third one right about here. Okay, and we're going to carry this. I use this as continuity. We're going to take this and we're going to move it over here. We're going to bring a post here. Here. Maybe this one will cock a little bit, just for the hell of it. And what that just adds depth. There's a scale to that. All that stuff kind of comes to pass. I also left a road out because I didn't feel I wanted it. I literally could take a little bit more white, a lot more medium, and come in and hit a few more. Oh, I like that. Best stroke I made in the whole damn painting right there, right at the end. That happens. Sometimes they just fall off your brush and you go, where the hell did that come from? I'm so glad. I wish they all worked like that. And that's that freedom. And then there's that evaluation side where you go back and you say, did I go too far with it? So I'll take a clean brush every now and then and do something like this. Just to muck it up a little bit. I think we're pretty close to what I would call done for the sake of demonstration. I think I've gone over about 5, but I know we started a little late. Hopefully this, I'd like to hear from any of you in terms of how you like the format that we did today, this new camera trick, a little bit of sound, a little bit of this and that, but just so we get, because I never know. I'm a guy sitting in a studio doing paintings, and I need to hear as to if certain things are working or not working, and how you guys are feeling about it in terms of because it's all about information. That's basically what I'm trying to do in these things, is give out information and show little things that maybe I haven't done before. So I really haven't decided what I'm going to do next week.
Rosie was requesting a
Rosie
still
was
life.
it was a what?
Still life.
I thought about that. If I could come up, but I don't want to do a still life in a photo. If I can come up with a good way of setting up a still life right back here with lighting and everything, I will. I've thought about that. I literally have. Otherwise, I may do a figure, or again, I may find something that I haven't done before. I know I did a little bit of the sea last week, which is always kind of fun. So, but if anybody has suggestions, email them to me or put them on Facebook. I'm open to different types of things. Maybe I'll do another animal sometime. In any event, you guys, I appreciate anybody who tunes in and watches these things. They're therapeutic for me. I hope they're informative for you. And so we have a tree, kind of a big old clumsy. I think that's the eucalyptus, but I'm not sure. It's a big, usually when they get these big base with all these different trees coming out like this, or these, they are eucalyptus. Anyway, hopefully that does the trick for you. I thank you again, and I will see you next week. Everybody stay healthy. Thanks. Okay.